Hello, hello. Are we on? Yeah? Is it live now? Looks like. Alright. Alright, well live. Alright. Welcome everyone. And as you can see, the topic will be Leighton Flowers and his misusing of the fathers to attack Augustine. But the first thing I like to go through, since the provisionists like to twist church history and the fathers, it would be about original sin. So I like to go for the first 5 to 10 minutes to just go through the quotes of the fathers on original sin. And also a bit of scholarship behind it. Yaroslav Pelikan's The Emergence of the Catholic Tradition, 100 to 600 AD. And when someone like Yaroslav Pelikan has quotes, you quote him, then most likely it's true. He's one of the best. And I got a quote from J.N.D. Kelly, an Anglican church historian. So let's go through the quotes through Kelly first, and we'll see. We'll show you there. So this, here it is, from J.N.D. Kelly, the church historian and Anglican. This is the one about Irenaeus on original sin. So much for Adam. Irenaeus regarded the story told in Genesis authentic history. The essence of Adam's sin, it should be noted, consisted in disobedience, but that sin entailed consequences for the whole race. Irenaeus has no doubt that the first man's disobedience is a source of general sinfulness and morality of mankind, as also of the enslavement to the devil. What Adam lost, all lost in him. Through disobedience of that one man who was first formed out of the untilled earth, the many were made sinners and lost life. Then, again, he states in chapter 3, the conception of Pauline in its ultimate derivation, the inauguration of a new restored humanity in Christ seems to have reached Justin from the theological tradition of Asia Minor. It was taken up and deepened by Irenaeus, who was also the first to work out comprehensive theories of theories both of original sin and of redemption. Let us glance first at his anthropology, which recalls that of Tatian and Theophilus, and again suggests the influence of Asian Minor. So we see straight away there that Kelly says Irenaeus of Lyon was kind of started out the first doctrine of original sin straight away. He was one generation away from the apostles. It's been said that he knew Polycarp. This is the quote from Irenaeus. Having become disobedient, Eve was made the cause of death for herself and for the whole human race. So also Mary, betrothed to a man, but nevertheless still a virgin, being obedient, was made for the cause of salvation for herself, for the whole human race. Thus the knot of Eve's disobedience was loosened by the obedience of Mary. What the Virgin Eve had bound in unbelief, the Virgin Mary loosed through faith. But this man of whom I have been speaking is Adam. If truth be told, the first formed man. We, however, are all from him. As we are from him, we have inherited his title of sin. I think it's quite clear that he held some form, close to original sin. according to scholars. He didn't believe it right on, but he was close to him. Indeed, through the first Adam, we offended God, not by observing his command through second Adam. However, we are reconciled and are made obedient unto death, for we are debtors to none other than except to him whose commandment were transgressed at the beginning. So there it is right there. For our first close theory of original sin. He was a few steps away from it. And he's Pelikan on original sin, and he says about Tertullian that let them be made Christians when they have become able to know Christ. Tertullian also spoke of the fall of Adam in a way that seemed to be a short step to the doctrine of original sin. Okay, Pelikan, one of the best church historians ever. He's well respected in all fields. Adam was called the pioneer of our race and of our sin. Man, he said, is condemned to death for having tasted the fruit of the miserable tree, and from it proceeds sins with the penalties, and now all are perishing who have never seen a single bit of paradise. Yet this language about the fall stopped short of a genuine doctrine of original sin. Indeed, Tertullian could have hardly taken this attitude toward infant baptism unless he had held lightly to the doctrine of original sin. So straight away, he was very, very close to believing original sin, and possibly maybe did believe it, according to Pelikan here. And there is another quote I can show you from Tertullian. He says this: finally, in every instance of vexation, contempt, and abhorrence, you pronounce the name of Satan, he whom we call the angel of wickedness, the author of every error, the corrupter of the whole world, through whom man was deceived in the very beginning, so that he transgressed the command of God on the account of his transgression. Man was given over to death, and the whole human race, which was infected by his seed and was made transmitter of condemnation. So there it is. Now moving on to Origen. In the writings of Origen, in the other hand, the custom of infant baptism was to be apostolic tradition. We'll probably get to the point. Attempting to draw together these various considerations, he proposed a tentative answer of infants. This is the quote: infants are baptized for the remission of sins. Of which sins, or at what time have they sinned? Or can there exist in the infants the reason for washing, unless in accordance with the idea that no one is clean of filth, not even if his life on earth has only been for one day, and because the filth of birth is removed by the sacrament of baptism. For that reason, infants are baptized, for unless one is born again, the water and the spirit cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Although Tertullian seemed to have makings of doctrine of original sin, he did not have necessary corollary the practice of infant baptism, while Origen, on the other hand, affirmed apostolic origin of infant baptism. He did not formulate an anthropology adequate to account for it. So Origen was close. And here's another quote. I was debating a provisionist, and he would quote Psalm 51:5, and little did he know the church fathers I was having a chat to a provisionist when I was watching the provisionist against the Lutheran on original sin. Oh, not original sin. Does regenerate precede faith? And so someone said, the provisionist, what theology does the provisionism come from? And they said, oh, it's pre-Augustine. Okay, and I said, okay, thanks, but that's clearly wrong. So they reject original sin, but Origen believed original sin, and this is what he believed very close to. Every soul that is born into flesh is soiled by the filth of wickedness and sin. Okay, they're already pretty much original sin, in a sense. Contradicting the provisionist view, and if it should be esteemed necessary to do so, there may be added the aforementioned considerations referring to previous scriptures cited that we all sin. The fact in the church baptism is given for the remission of sin. According to the usage of the church, baptism is given even to infants, and indeed, if there were nothing in infants which required remission of sins, and nothing in them pertained to forgiveness, the grace of baptism should be superfluous. That's Homilies on Leviticus 8:3. And another one, the church received from the apostles tradition of giving baptism even to infants, for the apostles, to whom were committed the secrets of divine mysteries, knew there is in everyone immediate stains of sin, which must be washed away, water and spirit. So I think it's very clear. Origen has very close, if not believed, original sin. Here's another one, and he quotes Psalm 51:5. So whenever you have a chat with a provisionist, no, you got historical support on Psalm 51:5. And this is the quote: "But the prophets have given some wise suggestions on the subject of things produced by generation, tell us that a sacrifice for sin was offered even for newborn infants, as not even being free from sin. They say, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Also they are estranged from the womb, which is followed by the singular expression, they go astray as soon as they are born, speaking lies." So there we have it. Very close to believing infant baptism, original sin, if not believing it. So the provisionists are pretty much wrong straight away there. That's terrible scholarship there from Ken Wilson. I don't know how I'll just say he's ignorant on that. And one more, the achievement of a correlation between the practice of infant baptism and original sin was the first made visible in Cyprian. Straight away. So we know 100% Cyprian did believe it. The fathers that I quoted before him had a very close view, and it sure seemed like they did believe it. It apparently had been a custom for pastors of the church to baptize infants on the 8th day after birth, but Cyprian insisted this was way too long to wait. And this is the quote: "If then they subsequently come to believe for the forgiveness of sins granted to the worst transgressions and to those who have sinned much against God, and if no one is denied access to baptism and to grace, how much less right do we have to deny it to an infant who have been born recently and has not sinned except in that born physically according to Adam? He has contracted the contagion of the ancient death by his first birth. The infant approaches much more easily to the reception of forgiveness of sins because their sins remitted to him are not of his own, but those of another." Okay, and Cyprian did in fact, then he goes on, Pelican, to say, Augustine learned from Ambrose, and Ambrose believed original sin. So, for those who say the doctrine of original sin is Manichaeanism, is simply wrong. We know 100% Cyprian was the first one to believe it, and the other fathers that I did quote had very close doctrine to it. Okay, so gone 14 minutes in, so let's get now to the to the actual article that I wanted to read out. Now, this is from my Lutheran friend Tuyen. Hopefully, he's told me he's listening, so hopefully I pronounced it correctly. So let's get into it straight away. Drinks break. So Leighton Flowers recently did a 2-hour response to Ryan Reeves' lectures on Luther vs. Calvin. Rather than address all he said in one post, the response will come in different parts. So this is part one. This part will deal with his claim to fathers like Chrysostom. Around 1725 mark of his video, Flowers appealed to Chrysostom for support for his provisionist views. Later in the video, he claimed Ken Wilson's dissertation proved his claims that his provisionist views were that the fathers such as Chrysostom taught. Now, I listened to that. It's the 17-minute mark. I should probably go there now. 17
Chrysostom and some of the earliest church teachings.
Okay, there he all.
Grace. That God has.
I don't know.
The first in the history. Which doctrine of predestination?
Wait.
The Calvinistic one or everybody else's?
Not sure if you can hear it.
That's the point, okay? Because even the earliest church, go read Chrysostom and some of the earliest church teachings on the doctrines of predestination, and they hold to a view that's more similar to what I've just now said than what reformers did. And so, again, you can't just call it the doctrine of predestination and assume everybody knows what you're talking about. To the church to teach this doctrine, there is an entire wellspring of fun.
All right. Hopefully you heard that. He said he believes Chrysostom's view of predestination. Okay. Well, obviously not Augustine's view, that's for sure. But in predestination, there is the gift of faith and the view of man. So it's not exactly the case there. But Leighton would have to clear that up. But and then my Lutheran friend goes on, since Flowers and the Provisionist camp have Wilson as their chief propagandist, with the bogus claim pushed by them and Wilson himself that he is the leading Augustinian scholar, which is not exactly true, not the best one. For those who knows his claims, it's just terrible scholarship. Wilson's claims that they used will be addressed in regards to Chrysostom. They go to the tactic provisionist crowd. Flowers and Wilson included loves to play is see how Augustine and Augustinians, they always conflate with them Calvinists, as it seems when the two aren't the same on all the issues related to the 5 points of Calvinism. Interpret passages like Manichaeanism and Gnostics, massively disingenuous coming from them, since the view of John 3:5, water as physical birth, sided with Gnostics, then against baptismal view of the text, all the fathers, including Augustine. And as an example of this is the selective quotation of Chrysostom's homily 46 on John. John 6:44, no man can come to me unto me except the Father which has sent me draw him. The Manichaeans sprung up upon these words, saying that nothing lies in our own power, yet the expression shows that we are masters of our will. An example of this is here used to slam Augustine as having the same understanding as the Manichaeans, John 6:44, based on his Manichaean past. And there's a post there, and for those who want to follow along, it is in the comment section below. Ken Wilson on page 257 of his Augustine's conversion from traditional free choice to non-free will wrote, Victorinus, Ambrosiasta, Jerome, Cassian, Chrysostom, and others all acknowledged the commonplace of God gifting grace and faith, i.e. salvation, did not come through human will, John 1:12-13, but God's grace, while some accepted the purely philosophical view of the will as part of anomia. None of these Christian leaders acknowledge Epictetus' evil will by declaring that his uses of Philippians 2:13, Ephesians 2:8-10, mistranslation, reinterpretation, proved his intim fide as God's gift. Augustine divorced himself and his followers from the regular fide of 3 centuries regarding Christians, stood alone. Pagans, Gnostic, and Manichaeans agree with him. Wait, Augustine stood alone on this? So is Ken Wilson saying no one believed faith is a gift from God before Augustine? If he's saying that is so wrong, and that is plain. It cannot be any more false, because I know you can just go to check Chrysostom's commentary on Philippians 1:29 and others that I can quote many, and this is just terrible scholarship. And those who are part of the Soteriology 101, they believe anything that Leighton and Ken Wilson tells them. They don't look it up. They don't really. I don't know if they. If they believe that no one believed it before Augustine, then they just believe it and they don't research it themselves, because well, they want Calvinism to be wrong, and somehow faith being a gift of God proves Calvinism right in some ways, at least. They don't want to give an inch to Calvinism being wrong at all. Jerome cited John 6:44. No one can come unto me against the Pelagians' book 3 in a very Augustinian way, shatters the pride of free will. So here's a quote from Jerome that sounded like an Augustinian. Here it is. Just as the vine branches shoots immediately decay when they are severed from the parent stem, so all the strength of men fades and perishes, but if it be bereft of the help of God, no one, he says, can come unto me except the Father who sent me draw him. When he says no one can come unto me, he shatters the pride of free will. Because even if a man will go to Christ, except that he be realized, which follows, unless my heavenly Father draw him, desire is to no purpose, and effort is in vain. At the same time, it is to be noted that he who's drawn does not run freely, but is led along either because he holds back and is sluggish, or because he is reluctant to go. And in context, when read even as a synergist, Chrysostom took a closer view of John 6:44 to Augustine or Jerome than Flowers or Wilson. So that quote right there that I just said before, it did sound like an Augustinian view. It shatters free will. So Jerome and Chrysostom, in essence, are not really in line with the provisionist view. But they're after with the debate with the Pelagians, I guess they shifted a little bit. But the provisionists can love to quote a statement from Chrysostom posted above, but completely ignore the next statements come from him. And here's the next quote from Chrysostom. For if a man comes to him, says someone, what need is there of drawing? But the words do not take away our free will, but show that we greatly need assistance. And he implies not an unwilling comer, but enjoying much succor. So there you go. He says the will greatly need assistance. Now, I know when Flowers quoted Chrysostom, he didn't include that quote. I wonder why. Maybe because, well, either he is trying to deceive, or he didn't really think that. I'll cut him some slack. I don't think he was trying to deceive and didn't want to include that quote. Only he and God knows, to be truly fair. There you have it. Chrysostom, while affirming man has free will, insisted he still needed divine assistance. Lest provisionist folks say late Augustine denied man has free will and denied God's grace assists free will of man, based on their need to caricature his views as God forcing people to believe against their wills. The Bishop of Hippo wrote this later, writing on grace and free will in 426 AD, 4 years prior to his death. Now he has revealed to us through his holy scriptures that there is in a man a free choice of will, but he has revealed this, I do not recount in human language, but in divine. There is, to begin with, the fact that God's precepts themselves would be of no use to a man unless he had free choice of will, so that by performing them he might obtain promised rewards. Chapter 2. This is another quote. What is the import of the fact that so many passages God requires all his commandments to be kept and fulfilled? How does he make his requisition if there is no free will? Augustine stated free will needed divine assistance in order to have faith multiple times in his writing. Therefore, dearly beloved, as we have now proved by our former testimonies from Holy Scripture, that there is in the man a free determination of will for living rightly and acting rightly. So now let us see that what are the divine testimonies concerning the grace of God. I will do anything good. Another quote. Now they to whom this is not given either unwilling or do not fulfill what they will, whereas they to whom it is given so will as to accomplish what they will, in order therefore that this saying which is not received by all men may yet be received by some. There are both the gift of God and free will, also in chapter 7. Here's another quote. It follows then the victory which is sin is vanquished is nothing else than the gift of God, who in this contest helps free will. Another quote. Now I strongly advise the earnest require your love to read attentively the book of Blessed Cyprian, which he wrote on the Lord's Prayer. As far as the Lord shall assist you, understand it and commit it to memory. In this work you will see how he appeals to the free will of those whom he edifies in his treatise, as to show them that whatever they have to fulfill in the law, they must ask for in prayer. But this, of course, would be utterly empty if the human will were sufficient for the performance without the help of God. Chapter 26. A last quote. And thus, indeed, he receives assistance to perform what he is commanded. Then this is the will of those who have ability, just as ability is also then of use when we have free will. For what does it profit us if we will what we are unable to do, or else do not will what we are able to do? Chapter 31. In other words, if later Augustine's views of grace and free will are Manichaean, then so will Chrysostom and especially later Jerome. So don't believe those people who say Augustine's doctrines are on original sin, on faith being gift of God, and things like that. They're wrong, and that's definitely not the case, because Chrysostom and Jerome pretty much had very similar views, although they were synergists. Now Flowers and his provisionists love to obfuscate and claim they hold to divine grace is needed prior to man having faith to claim. Falsely, they disagree with semi-Pelagians, but in order to do so, they have to redefine terms to where divine grace simply means divine revelation of what Christ did without God, working on the will to move it towards him. That's why they reject prevenient grace, which is dangerous, by the way. But such redefinition isn't even denied by semi-Pelagians or even Pelagians. Even both would agree that one needs to hear the word of God as grace before one makes a choice. And that's where they aren't in agreement with Chrysostom's homily on John. Chrysostom did say on John 6:45, do you see the dignify of faith? That not of men nor by men, but by God himself they shall learn this. Early on homily 45, John 6:37, the golden-mouthed preacher had this to say, and in this place by which the Father gives me, he declares nothing else than the believing on me is no ordinary thing, no that comes of human reasonings, but needs a revelation from above and a well-ordered soul to receive that revelation. Contrary to Flowers' view of grace being revelation without God working on the will to give faith as a gift, Chrysostom held to faith is a gift of God, such that he said, while faith is exercise of human free will, faith being given as a gift of God involves free will being cancelled. Here's what the Bishop of Constantinople wrote in his homily 4 on Ephesians. For by grace says he have you been saved, in order that the greatness of the benefits bestowed may not raise you too high. Observe how he brings you down. By grace you've been saved, says he, through faith. Then that on the other hand, our free will may not be impaired, he adds, also our part in the work, and yet again cancel, and it adds, not of ourselves, neither is faith. He means of ourselves, because he had not come. Yet had he not called us, how had he been able to believe? For how, says he shall they believe, unless they hear? So the work of faith is not of our own. So it's very clear Chrysostom did believe faith is a gift from God. And I remember reading Flowers earlier today and yesterday. He believes enabled. So that means that if you enable something, that means you allow it, you permit it. So that means faith is inside of man or something. That man exercises his uh, will to believe. But that's not. I think. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think inability and granted or gift are different. A gift is outside of us. Inability or what did he say? Enable is that you allow something that it's from within man, but God allows it. But gift and granted is outside of man; it comes from God. So I think it's totally different. Flowers and the provisionists will point out that Chrysostom said faith is a gift of God only as opportunity to receive offer of the gospel preached. But that doesn't negate Chrysostom's view of the language of faith. One, faith is a gift of God. Two, faith is not of ourselves. Three, that the work of faith is not of our own. And four, free will is cancelled in regards to God giving us faith through once given free will exercises faith. Then for those who want to read the article, it's in the comment section below. No matter how Flowers and Wilson and others in the provisionist crowd want to spin it, they cannot accuse Augustine of following Manichaeism via attempt at guilt by association with seeing faith as a gift of God, without also implicating Chrysostom and other fathers, none of whom have a Manichaean past. So, which is plain. So if you're going to say Augustine's being influenced by Manichaeanism, so is Jerome and Chrysostom. Wilson did make the attempt on pages 208 and 209 of the book. Jerome, commentary on Ephesians 1, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 10. Victorinus, Ephesians 1, 2 and 9. John Chrysostom, homily, Thessalonians 4, 1 to 3, all contemporaries and all believing traditional free choice had written on Ephesians 2, 8 and 10, with God gifting faith in a figurative sense, not divine, not unilateral predestination of individuals' eternal destinies. With these notable Christians expressing faith as a gift of God, meaning opportunity for salvation through free choice and willing good, Augustine was handled in valuable figurative language. It allowed him not to honestly assert belief in initial faith as God's hit in 396 CE, but to later 412 transform the figurative to a literal novel theology of Christianized duped while claiming he remained within the regular fide. Wilson offered no proof those fathers like Chrysostom and other fathers meant it figuratively when they said faith is a gift of God, and it doesn't fit his narrative aimed at slanderously blackening Augustine's name. But suppose they did so, it would still mean that that the text said faith is a gift of God, which according to Flowers and Wilson is a Manichaean view of the text. I mean, come on, that is ludicrous. That's just terrible scholarship there. Wilson offered, So note the church father said faith itself is not from yourselves, and even faith is not by our own will, but it is God's gift. Nowhere did he suggest he was being figuratively or really meant faith is a gift from God. Meant mere opportunity of salvation where one makes free choice on one's own. He stated freedom of the will itself has God as its originator, and he himself has permitted us to do will the good. That's not inconsistent with later Augustine's view of free will. Still remains in man, but must be assisted by God's saving grace to give faith as a gift. So, yeah, that's not the best scholarship there from Ken Wilson. Here's a quote from Marius Victorinus on Philippians chapter 1, verse 29. He believed faith is a gift from God. It was therefore within his purpose that he gave to us the gift of trusting in him. This was an incomparable gift. It is only by faith in him we are blessed so great a reward. We are to believe in such a way as to be ready to suffer for him. And so Augustine doesn't say anything different. If you want to read the quote, click on the link below. Those were the views who affirmed prevenient grace. Whether of monergistic or synergistic kind, can say provisionists such as Flowers and Wilson are not in agreement with the fathers they wish to pit against Augustine. As a side note, according to Wilson's narrative, that Flowers and his provisionist camp have been pushing free choice views of fathers meant denial of infant baptismal regeneration, which, according to Wilson, was the invention of Augustine reverting back to Manichaean Gnosticism, and such invention of Augustine was central to him going into such Manichaean Gnostic views such as faith is a gift from God. So that is, again, here is a quote from Wilson in his book, The Foundation of Augustinian Calvinism, page 78. Fortunatus also quoted Ephesians 2:8 and 9 as definitive proof for initial faith as being gift of God's gift by grace. Augustine objected, Fort 1617. He never mentioned faith as a gift when citing Ephesians 2:8 and 9 until later, 4:11. It is first appearance where Augustine defends a Manichaean interpretation occurs, where he builds upon his work immediately prior. He claims since it's obviously impossible for newborns to have faith or believe they cannot yet understand, make a choice, then God gives newborn salvation through the parents' faith, now teaches proxy salvation. The faith of someone else can save you. The critical foundation of infant baptism for salvation, Augustine's novel theology, cannot be overstated. So Wilson and those who pushed revisionist garbage cannot play the Manichaean card on Augustine without implicating the church fathers before him, such as Irenaeus, Hippolytus, Cyprian, Origen, even later Tertullian, Augustine's own mentor Ambrose, as well as the church fathers in his life, such as Chrysostom and Jerome. The fact of the matter, Wilson was trying to rewrite church history to turn pre-Augustine fathers as well as his contemporaries into a bunch of age-old Canterbury teachers who deny baptismal salvation and affirmed one cannot be baptized until one is old enough to make a free choice for the faith. He did concede infant baptism was practiced in only two areas, North Africa and Rome, but claimed laughably when it suits him that it was done for unknown reasons until Augustine made up Manichaean Gnostic reasons at the time when it suits him it was done for non-salvation purposes. If that's the provisionist free will view that Wilson and the Flowers camp promotes propaganda, they want to pass the fathers holding until Augustine came along, pushed his Manichaean Gnostic views on infant baptismal salvation. They undermine any claims to the history of the faith. So it's very clear that Ken Wilson just didn't do very good scholarship there. And their camp can't hide behind Augustinian original sin is Manichaean in regards to infant baptismal salvation without also implicating fathers like Jerome and Cyprian, whom he cited Jerome against the Pelagians. One thing I will say, and so in my discourse, that you ought to either give us a new creed so that after baptizing children into the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit, you may baptize them in the kingdom into the kingdom of heaven, or if you have one baptism both for infants and for persons of mature age, it follows that infants also should be baptized for remission of sin, the likeness of transgression of Adam. But if you think the remission of sin of another's sins implies injustice that he had no need of who could not sin, cross over to Origen, your special favorite, who says the ancient offenses committed long before heavens are loosened in baptism. You will not only led by his authority in other matters, but will follow his error in this also. So it's very clear that Ken Wilson's view is simply wrong, and he was just very wrong on that, and that along with Flowers, they don't really understand church history there. That's why it's very important to read church history, because it seems like Leighton Flowers just wanting to use the fathers to defend his theology. So in saying that, he wants to make them Southern Baptist, which is not the case. That's why we let the fathers be the church fathers as they are. They weren't Southern Baptist, they weren't Lutheran, they weren't Reformed, they weren't either Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox. They were, well, as they would say themselves, Catholic, but not Roman Catholic. Otherwise, we can shape them whoever we want. And hey, like many people, well, I'm sure Leighton Flowers and Ken Wilson would say that they would hold baptism is symbolic and the Lord's Supper is symbolic. That's definitely not the case. But there you go. So I guess I can probably finish a little bit early. And next time I'll see what I'll do. Maybe I'll see since next time. But tomorrow there'll be the papacy by my friend Jack Shannon, refuting the papacy, and that will be very interesting. He'll be quoting from the fathers there, and hopefully you guys can join in on the live stream. All right, guys, thanks for listening or watching. God bless, and have a good day or night. And bye-bye. Oh, we have it.